Okay, our last major topic to talk about of this chapter is the extracellular components of both the animal and plant cell. And what you're looking at here is the membrane, plasma membrane in the what is just outside the plasma membrane with regard to a animal cell. Because what happens is the cell, and the cell works as a whole. There isn't any part that is more important or less important than the next. They make things, they secrete things um, outside the plasma membrane. They also take components in to make those things. So the cell wall of a plant is different than an animal. What you're looking at is the extracellular matrix, so the EMC of an animal cell here, which has different types of junctions. Animal cells don't have cell walls, but are covered with an arrangement of carbohydrate attached proteins, which we call glycoproteins, and then other types of proteins, proteoglycans, as well as fibers of proteins, and so fibrous attachments, and then that bind to the outer portion of the plasma membrane. One of the reasons why this is needed is, for example, the proteoglycans are bound together in a strong cable, which we call collagen fibers, and then the fibronectin that allows for proteins to be embedded into the cell membrane to create these channels. These protein channels we talked about, or specific proteins that are embedded that are considered receptor, or that actually define the cell as self or non-self. So you have various reasons why proteins would be embedded in the plasma membrane. Most things are secreted via the plasma membrane. The cell wall of a plant is different than an animal. The cell wall of the plant is made up of cellulose. Cellulose is microfibrils with a polysaccharide, so microfibrils with a polysaccharide, again, which makes it very, very strong. Cellulose is a very strong building block of a cell wall. The cell wall also has openings that allow for things to get out of the cell, and also for there to be communication from cells to cells in terms of a plant. Plant kind of grows very interesting with a primary cell wall first, and then a middle, which is called the middle lamina, which has polysaccharides in called pectins. And the only reason I bring that up is if any of you make jams and jellies, you use these pectins in your jams and jellies. And then as the plant matures, you have a secondary cell wall that is the mature cell wall with regard to the mature plant. And you have an image of the primary wall here on the right. And then the three layers of the secondary cell wall, as well as the middle lamina, which is kind of a channel, I guess you might say, with these sticky polysaccharides that allows for there to be a passageway in terms of from cell to cell in the individual plant. Those passage channels are called plasmodesmatas. Different types of junctions in animal cells. I know it seems like we're bouncing back and forth, but animal and plant cell walls, the outer portion, are different. In the animal cell, there are three basic types. You have tight junctions, And what they do is they form a very solid bond between cells. Tight junctions resist anything moving through them. And so you can kind of think of tight junctions where your skin cells are tightly bonded to each other. And you can actually see when one of these tight junctions wear out or lose its ability to function anymore, and that's when you have a whole group of skin cells. When you're actually, say you have a sunburn and a whole group of skin cells or a whole layer of skin cells come off in peeling, when I think we tend to call it peeling of a sunburn. That's these tight junctions that give up and the whole thing comes off. But it prevents anything moving across, prevents leakage. It actually allows for the skin to be this water resistant barrier that we have on the outside of our bodies. And then you have desmosomes, which can attach cells to each other. They're kind of like snaps that attach cells to each other. Very strong attachments. Now, they are very strong attachments, but just like a snap can be pulled apart, things can pull these junctions apart. And if you think of that's where you have the attachments of muscles, there are movements that can actually tear your muscle. You quote unquote tear a muscle. You're actually tearing these junctions. And then you have gap junctions, which just like the name says, they are attachments of cells, but they're attachments of cells that allow for there to be passageway of items going from one cell to another. Particularly, we think of gap junctions are like the plasmodesmatas of the plant, but you think of gap junctions in the heart muscle, where you have gap junctions that allow the electrical impulse to go from muscle cell to muscle cell so that the heart beats in a very synchronistic way. Then the last thing to talk about that's nice, you'll be excited about this one, it's a little bit shorter than the others, is the integration of everything that we talked about together in order to allow the cell to function as an individual cell. And then remember that you are made up of billions of these, each doing these, they don't all do the same thing, but they generally do most of these things. And what you have here is the ability for something that in theory we think has no motility, but for it actually to move, thanks to those microtubules or the microfilaments, to actually put out projections, have those projections attached to what it recognizes as food, have there be the ability for a vacuole to be made, and for that food vacuole to be taken in to the structure, and then after taken into the structure, whatever it might be, to be digested and have the parts go into the energy processing of the cell. Well, we have made a long journey, so as I said, these are the items that you should be able to, or you want to review and be able to at least have some working knowledge of after listening to this, after reading the chapter, and after doing the chapter outline. We'll talk about biology in the next teaching portion.